It was nighttime in Baghdad. It was 90 degrees, but we were all shivering from the cold. Earlier that day, it had been upwards of 135 degrees beneath our body armor, and our bodies were just totally flummoxed by this huge shift in real temperature. As we patrolled, there was an explosion, rocking our decidedly unarmored Humvee. At once, my driver and I pushed out of the passenger side, pressing into the dirt of the road. 12 other guys in the platoon maneuvered the 2 Bradley fighting vehicles into a defensive position, preparing for the follow-up ambush. After several tense minutes of breathing, adrenaline, fear, smoke, nothing happened. I got to my feet and cautiously edged to the blast site. I could see that an improvised grenade detonator had exploded, but it had failed to trigger the 4-foot artillery shell to which it was attached. Dumb luck. Had the IED worked as intended, we would have been vaporized. And all in all, this is a good day in Iraq in 2003. This is not where I expected I would be. I grew up in an idyllic New England town with safe streets and safer career paths. Concord, Massachusetts is a storied place. Indeed, every April 19th, the famous Battle of the Old North Bridge is reenacted. I remember the thrill of seeing the Minutemen running down the field to meet the British soldiers. They were running to the enemy, and they did it every year of my childhood. Running to the enemy to confront injustice and wrongs was also a theme in my family life. Both my parents understood the value of public service. My father, presidential speechwriter and advisor Dick Goodwin, shared stories of his heady days in the White House, working with JFK and LBJ in the Great Society, the New Frontier, running to confront the wrongs of self-interest and economic injustice. My mother, historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, was known to talk aloud to Abraham Lincoln, to Franklin, Eleanor, and Theodore Roosevelt while she worked on her presidential biographies. They were heroic ideals of men and women, unbowed in the face of seemingly overwhelming wrongs. Still, I never conceived that I would join the military. After graduating college in 2001, I planned to work in Washington. Law school would follow. But my life, like the lives of so many others, changed on September 11th. I remember I was in a gym on a treadmill that morning when the images of the attack changed the temperature of that room. And really, they altered the treadmill-like path that I had planned for myself. I decided, then and there, to drive to the nearest recruiting station and enlist in the United States Army. My decision came from a clear sense that soon, young people were going to be called upon to do something somewhere. And deep down, I felt that it was my time, at 23 years of age, to begin running towards a cause bigger than myself. Today, I see that my decision to volunteer played out, and is still playing out, in the form of 3 timeless civic expectations for service. Prepare to serve, answer the call, call to others. Basic training was, well, basic. We learned to fire weapons, survive gas attacks, administer first aid. We learned to follow orders. But above all, we learned in training, as would be reinforced in combat, to work together as a team, despite our differences, to run together toward the enemy. I mean, you had a gruff specialist from Boston, side by side with a moon-eyed private from Kansas, a religious kid from Chicago's inner city, and the college kid raised in a cul-de-sac. It was a true blending of regions, races, religions, and socioeconomic backgrounds. And you know, we found that we all had the same emotions of fear, embarrassment, and elation as we confronted and later overcame our first obstacle course. We practiced hand-to-hand combat during the day and then spent the evening cleaning toilets and washing dishes. And we all had that same mixture of hatred and awe for the drill sergeant who made us run through the mud and grime with 35 pounds of equipment on our back. For me, in Iraq, those pressures of basic training almost seemed sophomoric. But it had laid the framework for what we were to need in a combat zone. Because we had become a blended unit, we were able to instinctively abandon ego and entitlements, to press on, despite our differences, to achieve a higher common mission. Disagreements? Press on. Mistakes and blame? Press on. Injury? Press on. Entire year without a shower? Press on. We were compelled to prepare to serve with a cross-section of America's men and women for our country and our communities. Ask yourself, Where does that blending today occur in our culture for young people? Our sons and daughters, our nieces and nephews, our grandkids, ourselves. Again, that timeless formula of service. Prepare to serve, answer the call, call to others. I spent about 13 months in Iraq, and in 2006, I got out of the Army. I found a job I loved in New York. I let my hair grow long. I got pretty soft, probably tubby, but I had done my bit. I was done with uniforms. So, when a letter arrived in the mail 2 years into my civilian life, informing me that I was being involuntarily recalled to active duty, the temperature in the room once again changed. My first reaction was to pour more than a few fingers of whiskey, to run away. But when I sobered up, I realized that all the reasons I had joined the Army in the first place were still valid. And it sounds odd to say out loud, but I had been given a gift, the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than myself with a cross-section of America's men and women. So I answered the call, again, this time to Afghanistan. My role there was very different from the one I had in Iraq. Instead of gritty combat operations, I was tasked, in part, with the investigation of civilian casualty incidents. The scenario: a bomb or bullets go off target. Civilians are dead. As representatives of the coalition forces, we meet with ground and special forces units. We inspect the site, attempting to determine the existence and extent of any death or destruction. We meet with tribal leaders, local elders, grieving families. We bring all parties together to try to determine and accept responsibility. We strive for a peaceful resolution in the face of shock, shame, fear, and overwhelming grief. And then we hop in a plane and fly back to headquarters, sometimes absorbing anti-aircraft fire on the way. It was grinding, it was emotional, gut-wrenching, and important. We were entrusted to answer the call with fellow soldiers and Afghans and other nations for all of our countries and all of our communities. Ask yourself, where do we ask our young people today, our sons and daughters, our nieces and nephews, our grandkids, ourselves, to shoulder responsibilities that press us beyond personal pursuits? Again, that timeless formula of service: prepare to serve, answer the call, call to others. 70 years ago, another generation of battle-tested veterans returned home. They had entered basic training as individuals, and they were molded into soldiers and sailors, nurses and pilots. They prepared to serve. And then in war zones and on the home front, they ran to answer the call. And finally, they returned to their civilian life, energized to inspire others to service. In the Greatest Generations Day, some 77% of America's representatives in city halls, state houses, and Congress had served in the armed forces. And the majority of Americans had served in some capacity, or at the very least had a family member who had served. And look at what we were able to accomplish: civil rights, voting rights, Medicare, putting a man on the moon. Acts and achievements which demanded cooperation that transcended party and ideological lines. Acts and achievements would seem almost inconceivable in today's divisive political climate. Because today, those numbers are slim, at or near an all-time low. Less than 1% of Americans have served in uniform, and the relational, political, socioeconomic, and cultural divides have never been greater. That is why I believe the time has come to enter into a conversation about a national service program, a common training and proving ground with a range of options: Peace Corps, City Year, Teach for America, Americorps, and yes, military service. As citizens, we should be expected to do more than merely pay taxes and obey the law. Most of us can't even be bothered to vote. We should ask all our young people to run towards service, to be called upon to do something, somewhere. They will be better for it as individuals. We will be better for it as Americans. National service could mean that young people are seen running to help rebuild tornado-ravaged cities, running to address inner city and rural blight, running to the needs of refugees, and all returning home energized to inspire others to service. This is a call to require that young Americans learn what challenge and achievement towards a common goal really means, where service to others becomes the norm, to return to a civic life that's earned. As leaders, we are expected to call to others, with our fellow citizens, for our community and our country. Ask yourselves, what can you do to help realize that renewed doorway to service? How would that change your son or daughter, your niece or nephew, your grandkids, or you? Again, that timeless formula of service. Prepare to serve, answer the call, call to others. After Afghanistan, I returned home to Concord. I went to law school and I started a career. And even though my awareness of the value of my service has only grown, like many of you perhaps, I had other priorities, reasons not to take action. You see, when I returned home, there was another explosion. I was called into yet another war zone where the shifts in temperature are equally extreme. I was diagnosed with primary progressive multiple sclerosis. My first reaction was to duck for cover, to stay down, to press myself once more into the dirt. But I had been trained to run to the enemy, so I got back up. Today, I'm not sure my personal path is going to take me. In 10 years, I may be in a walker, in a wheelchair, or training for a marathon. But I refuse to be defined by my battle with MS, and instead focus on how blessed I am to be here with you at the beginning of this conversation. Yes, my time may be more limited than yours, but I know we all have limits individually, just as I know that neither my health nor this call to service are individual battles. Imagine a day where a generation of adults take their first steps into adulthood through this doorway of national service. Imagine a time where they then assume leadership roles in government, industry, academia, social services. Ask yourselves, who will make our country better? Given the opportunity, our young people will, as they prepare to serve, answer the call, and call to others. That's a day we're sprinting towards, and that's an idea we're spreading. Thank you.